It's said that the number of friends that you'll have will peak at age 25, and it's a downhill slope from there. That's obviously depressing, but begs the question, what is friendship? Are your social media connections your friends? Has the digital age caused our ability to be real life friends to atrophy? And how do we maintain meaningful friendships when our seasons of life change dramatically? There's obviously a lot to talk about here. And my next guest is up for the challenge. He's the best-selling author of Friendship in the Age of Loneliness. He's also a renowned keynote speaker who regularly speaks at companies like Apple and Google. And his TED Talk on the quarter-life crisis has over 1.7 million views. Today, he's going to help us close the friendship gap, knowing people versus being known, how to have more authentic relationships and be less lonely. Thoughtful writer, purposeful friend, fellow calendar and listener, Adam Smiley Poswolsky. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I would love to kick it off by just kind of defining friendship because there's a real gap in the English language for any nuance there, you know? I once heard Big Bang Theory actor Mayim Bialik respond to the question if her and Jim Parsons were friends in real life. And she said, well, you know, she was real thoughtful about it. We check in with each other. We've experienced life events together. I know his family. So yeah, we're friends. And I thought, wow, that was a really thoughtful answer. I've never thought to like checklist criteria of defining a friend. I don't think I would ever introduce anyone not as a friend. Like, hi, here's my acquaintance. Just feels sort of rude, you know? So how do you define friendship?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no one answer or one definition. And I think that, you know, far be it from me or from anyone really to kind of define what a friend is. If you feel like you're close with someone, that's a beautiful thing. Great. But I think that if we look at the data, we know that there's a friendship gap, right? The average American hasn't made a new friend in the last 5 years. 75% of Americans aren't satisfied with their friendships. 1 in 5 people have no close social connections at all, 0. 15% of men have no close friends. So I think that we throw the word around. And I think generally when we use it, we mean someone we've met, someone we got to know, someone we met at a party, someone we follow on Instagram, someone maybe we even had a drink with once, which is great. But what we're looking for is more of something more meaningful, something deeper. So, you know, there's data research from Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas that shows that someone is a close friend, can't be a close friend unless you've spent 200 hours with them, right? Which I think is actually a little bit staggering, but helpful to be like, oh, maybe that's why I don't feel that deep connection with them. We've spent 25 minutes together. We met once. So a phrase or kind of, I would use it as someone you've shared a significant life experience with that you really care about, that cares about you, as kind of a general framing, which kind of, I think, leaves it open and is a little bit broad, but also kind of an opportunity to go deeper, right? Is kind of saying something that we want that's missing, that gap.
And when you pair that with the statistics that you just shared about the feeling that is missing in the word that we use all the time, it really makes sense because we have all these connections, but we're not logging those hours with those people, with those friends. We're maybe seeing them because of social media, but we're not really investing that one-on-one time that would create the feeling that we're missing.
Yeah, they're connections, not friendship, right? They're maybe fans or followers, but not friends. They're people we've met, they're acquaintances, which are important. And we need those in our lives to have, you know, thriving community and people that we are excited about seeing. But I think that, you know, when we look at kind of the skyrocketing rates of loneliness, both in the United States and worldwide, I mean, this is a global epidemic and has been and was prior to the pandemic, prior to 2 years of many people experiencing social isolation, social distancing and lockdowns and all of these things, that clearly this is something that is not just one or two people, right? The 2/3 of Americans are lonely, and loneliness is really the subjective gap between where your social connections are and where you want them to be. It's that difference, right? Of like, I have people, but I would like to have people like this, or I would like to experience something more, something different, something greater, something more intimate, something more emotional, something deeper. And I think that it's our job to kind of close that gap.
And it seems like we are become more people gatherers than connectors, to use your word. And in some ways, that has helped me personally to know that there are friends that are in certain situations. They're situational friends, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, on situational friends becoming deeper friends, because you have, your drinking buddy. I have like a surf friend. I have, you have a friend that you go to the gym with. So I'd love your thoughts on situational friends and taking those relationships to another level instead of just letting them live within the context of that one scenario.
Yeah. And I think that I want to make sure that I don't speak negatively about situational friendships. I think that a lot of close relationships start with that, right? Like maybe you're on vacation and you're staying at a hostel with somebody, or you do a cooking class with somebody, or take a boat trip or hiking, whatever it is. And it's like this moment in time, this week together, 2 weeks together, and you get so deep so quickly. I think we can all kind of identify with that experience sometime, maybe traveling, especially when you're younger, or you share this kind of peak experience with somebody where you barely know them, but you spent 2 or 3 days together and it feels like you're best friends. The key is not to drop them, right? I think that that's the big thing, is that as we get older, as we maybe move across the country or in different parts of the world, where you check in with people, you kind of say, hey, how's it going? And you don't let that experience kind of wither away as something that just happened 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago. It's somebody that maybe you write a letter to, maybe you schedule an annual, video call if you're in different places where you can kind of check in, or you have some context for keeping them in your life, and not dropping them. I mean, for the book, I talked to a lot of people and people that, I'm like, that seem like they have really deep friendships over time. I'm say, how do you do this? How do you stay in touch with people? And they say their biggest thing is they don't drop folks. They really make an effort to, whether it's through correspondence or through meeting up annually, to really kind of keep people in their life. Because otherwise you do get a little bit more just situational friendships. I think there's nothing wrong with having situational friendships. What you want is the yes and. You want those and people that are deeper. If you just have situational friendships, you might feel more of the gap. You might feel more of that yearning for something more.
And certainly the pandemic created its own type of situational friend, right? Like I have what I've called pandemic pals, people that I electronically met during the pandemic, either through podcasting or just because, and we would have Zoom coffees or whatever. And I remember when I was listening to your book, I was asking myself, are those folks like my friends? Like, I'm questioning everything now, Smiley.
They are. If you felt like they were for your friends, they're your friends. Right? Like, friendship is in the eye of the beholder. I think if you feel connection with someone, that's a beautiful thing, right? That's amazing. And I think a lot of times, I think there's also in the pandemic, a lot of times people thought that they were their close friends, that they were a little bit like, oh, I know who my real friends are, because these people I thought were my friends were not talking at all, or they didn't check in on me, or we haven't talked for 6 months or a year, or because we don't meet up at the gym or we don't see each other at the office, like our relationship is kind of withered away. So maybe they weren't that important in your life, and that's okay too. And I think a lot of people this time was kind of a recalibration of understanding, maybe I'll speak for myself, had a lot more surface level friendships. I'm an extroverted person. I meet people kind of for a living. I do a lot of talks and go to conferences and events. And I'd kind of picked up all of these people on my journey that were connections, but they weren't deep friendships. And my social circle during the pandemic shrunk in a way that I actually found very illuminating and actually a positive on my life, because I don't think I could really keep track of everyone else that I had in 2019. Right. And I realized, okay, maybe I don't need all these people. I need one or two or three people in my life that I can rely on, that can rely on me, and that maybe there's something more manageable there. A lot of the data shows that people are not looking for more connections, they're looking for deeper connections. They're looking to go, deeper, not wider.
Yes. And I was impressed by your description of some of the rituals and habits. And I mean, they kind of were hacks too, to, deepen those friendships, not drop people. I would love for you to share some of those that you personally find easy to integrate into your busy life.
Yeah. Well, there's quite a few. I think of the book as kind of all of these as rituals or recipes. Like I actually, my idea for it is kind of like a cookbook for friendship.
Oh, I love that.
So on any given day, sometimes you're in the mood for pasta, sometimes you're in the mood for a salad, for chicken, and sometimes you're like, I don't want a salad, get away from me, right? Sometimes you don't even want to cook, you want to get takeout. And that's kind of the idea of this book, is that you can pick it up on any given day, say, oh, I'll try that out, or not that one, this one. And it kind of gives people that permission.
I love that. It's like tools. I call that, like, in the terms of mental health, like I call that tools in my tool belt. Like, okay, this one strategy I used for my own personal wellness didn't work today. Okay, what else we have in the toolbox? But I love that idea for friendship. I never thought of that.
Okay, let me give you a couple here.
Okay.
Just kind of practical ones. Always go on a second date. So this idea that if you might meet someone and you generally like them and you generally kind of don't find them a horrible person, or don't find them creepy, or don't find them someone that's making you feel unsafe. If someone makes you feel unsafe or unwelcome, goodbye.
Dear God, do not be friends with them. Yeah.
Right?
Run immediately.
Clear. Same thing in dating. Same thing with an online date or meeting a stranger, right? But if someone piques your interest or seems interesting, hang out with them again. And I talk about this guy in the book, Sahar, who basically has this monthly potluck that he invites people to. So he's always got something on the calendar. It's once a month. It's in his backyard. Obviously, during the pandemic, he couldn't do it in person, but now, and it's something that he meets somebody interesting, he invites them to the potluck, right? He's got a friendship card instead of a business card that says, let's be friends. It's got his email and his phone number on it. And that way it's this kind of low effort, right? He's kind of like, it's on the calendar, come to my monthly potluck. He meets someone. He doesn't have to plan like a whole, other event or get something on the calendar. And he invites people to this. And then maybe people that have come in the past also come, and maybe those people can be friends. It's this idea that you're kind of like always having something on the calendar, always something to look forward to. I think that's a really great way to kind of just encourage that connection. Having a Monday night activity club. Doesn't have to be Monday night. Could be Tuesday night. Could be Wednesday night. This could be weekly. This could be monthly. Just something where you're gathering people around an activity. You can switch it up. Could be cooking. Could be sewing. Could be yoga. Could be whatever that is on the calendar that's happening. Don't go out for drinks. I think that believe me, I like to have a beer every now and then. I like to have a glass of wine. I think that kind of creating that as the context for how you connect with people is great, but is limiting. I think it limits it to kind of the typical chit chat that you've done on a first date, and isn't necessarily as possibility creating as doing an activity with someone, or having an experience with someone, or learning something with someone. Now, maybe you do one of those activities and then you go out for a drink.
Okay. That I can wrap my head around.
I'm just saying, like,
that's unexpected, because I would think that doing the activity would mean you're not speaking to each other as much, and drinking, you're like face to face,
Yeah.
Well, that's how women are face to face.
Men are usually watching a game, right? So I think sometimes alcohol can be used, nothing against alcohol, but can be used kind of as a crutch. And I think that when you're drinking, you kind of usually fall back on the typical kind of chit chat, like the weather, how's your work? Like, oh my gosh, but not as much on a deep kind of burning question of like, what's your purpose? What are you up to in life? Like, What do you want to create? What do you want to build? And when you learn something together, you can maybe go deeper quicker. And it just switches things up. It's usually you're doing an experience that maybe you haven't done before as yourself, and probably obviously haven't done with a new person. Whereas going out for drinks is probably something you've done before. So it creates something new, something different. Any opportunity to play. I think there's a lot of research that shows, this as curiosities in the title of your podcast. Curiosity, play, trying something new is actually proven to make people open up, make people more vulnerable, make people more excited, make people more creative. And when you have that environment, there's a reason why the time we make most of our friends is when we're a little kid, because we're playing, we're running around. Everything is I'm going to climb on that thing. Me too. Or you want to do this? You want to play make believe? You want to play dress up? Like it's all yes. It's all yes. And in the same way that improv would be, right? Because you're saying yes, you're open to new ideas, which creates the environment for people to connect and see people kind of in their fullest and in their most potential. That's a big one for me.
Do you find that there's
a hype person? Sorry.
I was just going to say, do you find that there's special friendship considerations, since we're talking about practical strategies here, for hetero co-ed friendships? Because I noticed you have a lot of female friends that you quoted in your book.
Say that one more time, the question.
I noticed you had a lot of female friendships that you quote in your book, and I was wondering if there were special considerations for hetero co-ed relationships that are friendships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that platonic friendships are kind of the bedrock of a healthy life. Whether whoever you're attracted to and whether you're dating, whether you're in a long-term partnership or not. And I think that I wouldn't say like specific considerations. I would just say that making sure that everyone feels welcome and there's honest communication about what people are looking for. I've had a lot of friendships that have developed from dating. I've had a lot of friendships that have developed just from, having a space of mutual trust and support for somebody. And I think that where there's conflict usually arises is when one person is looking for something that's different than what the other person is looking for. And then the best way to avoid that, or the best way to navigate that, is to communicate and say, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I'm available for. Here's what I'm not available for. I'm not saying that's easy, but I think that that's really kind of creates trust. It's kind of saying, hey, like, I have a partner. I'm looking for platonic friends, or I don't actually know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people in my life. Cool. Like, you're honest and open about that, and someone can meet you where they are or choose not to. So I think that kind of open, honest communication is kind of the key there.
It provides a lot of. Oh, sorry.
Please.
It provides a lot of perspective too. I mean, I really enjoy men. I worked in a female-dominated sales industry for almost 20 years, and then podcasting is mainly men, and so I've met all these fantastic guys, and they just have a different way of thinking. And so it's funny to, tell them a story or a situation and hear their response. And I'm like, really? That's what you got out of that? like it's just, it's so interesting because it breaks me out of that, female bubble, I guess. So I really appreciate that. And I thought it was really neat to hear that you also enjoy and value female friendships.
Yeah, I'd say that some of my closest friendships are female friendships. I also will say that I think it's really important, just speaking kind of specifically on the gender thing, that men find close male friendships. I think that there's a lot of research now showing increased rates of anxiety, depression, stress, suicide among men. Men, I think, are 3 times as likely to die from suicide as women. And that there's a lot of really, really poor health outcomes and societal outcomes when men don't have close male friendships where they can be emotionally open, vulnerable, safe, healthy with other men. So whether that's joining a men's group, whether that's developing a friendship from an activity, I really think that this is actually incredibly important, especially for the next generation, especially for young men and boys, to find these close male friendships, in addition to friendships across from any background and regardless of gender. But I think that specifically for men, there's a lot of research showing the incredible value of having other men in your life that are modeling kind of healthy intimacy, vulnerability, emotional maturity, and just people that you can talk to about real things.
There's a lot of incentive to identify potentially great friends among your contacts now. I have a counselor friend who says the number one question, literally, that she gets asked by her clients is, how do I make new friends? Mm-hmm. And after reading your book, I think the question really is, how do I cultivate authentic friendships from the contacts that are already in my life? Not to say that, seats taken, like you can still make a new friend, but to cultivate those new ones, there's obviously a lot of incentive there. I'd love for you to explain what the friend map is and the circle exercise, because in my mind, I was like, ooh, this will really help me identify where I should invest more time.
Sure. So the friend map idea is just pretty simple, is just kind of making a map of where you live, maybe your country, your state, your country, the world. It can be printed out if you don't want to get, try to draw the entire world and see how off your drawing is. Or it can just, you can try to sketch it, and basically just kind of mapping out where people are that you've met in your life that you would consider a friend. I think that that's a really just useful exercise, just to kind of see where people are. If you're like me, I'm in my late 30s. You get to a certain age and you're kind of like, wait a second, where are my friends? Like where are my friends? Like you think you know where they are, especially after the pandemic. Who knows where people are? They might be living in a completely different city, completely different town, completely different country. Yeah. And just putting them on a map, I think, is really helpful, just to kind of get a sense of, you have people in your life. You do. Even if it's just a few, that's enough. And where they are, kind of as a way to maybe reach out or just kind of get a sense of where people are. And maybe if you don't have many people in the place that you're living in, that's a kind of, a little bell going off, being like, that's something I need to work on. That's an intention that I need more friends locally, because you got to have people that are in your day-to-day life. So that's kind of the friend map. And then the circles of intimacy is really just kind of getting a sense of all of the different people in your life and the closeness level. I think it's helpful, less on the kind of specific definitions of what goes into each circle. If you can think about the inner circle would be maybe family, close friends, chosen family. Some people use that phrase to kind of connote people that, yes, you don't share blood, but you, for all intents and purposes, do share blood. You love them. Maybe you even love them more than your own family. And there's a lot of people that have that situation. And then maybe as you go out there, people that are close friends, but a little bit farther out, and then maybe more like acquaintances, and then maybe even farther out, people that you've met once or twice at an event, or, only online, only through Instagram, only through TikTok or whatever, just to kind of get a sense of, again, you put them where they are and you can kind of see where you're at. It's almost like doing a friendship audit. You get a sense of, I have a lot of surface level friendships, but not that many people in my inner circle. I need to get a few of these people that are out on the surface and bring them in closer. How might I do that? Maybe I pick one or two of Smiley's recipes from his book. Maybe I listen to a podcast like Meredith's and kind of listen for some tools, or pick a couple events that I want to go to next month and meet somebody new, or bring somebody that I've met once or twice and say, hey, do you want to come over for dinner? So you could get a sense of where you're at and where you want to be going. I think with all of these things, you can't really go into the future without knowing where you're at. So these are kind of a ways, it's just amazing to me. We spend so little of our time with our friends. 4% of our time was with our friends. And people come up with all of these other solutions for, self-help, living a better life, be happier, do Peloton, do nothing, meditate. And all these things are great, but very few people, when talking about living a better, more full life, say, spend more time with your friends, think more about friendship, brainstorm more about friendship, journal more about friendship. And I'm not saying that's going to solve everything, but I do think it's a relatively simple an accessible solution to doing something that we know from a science level, from a human level, makes us feel better. Social support increases our chance of survival by up to 50%. It's one of the number one factors that determines living a healthy life is having close social relationships. Yet we're not spending that much time thinking about it. So how the hell can we expect to have close social relationships? We just assume that it happens because, that's what we assume. We assume, oh yeah, I had friends when I was a kid. I went to college. Maybe I didn't go to college, but friendship, yeah, that's just 101 adulthood. It's like, look at where we're at. Clearly, it's not 101 adulthood. Clearly, we needed a class about it. We didn't get classes about it. Clearly, it needs to be something that is more, we spend more time thinking about and doing, right? And actually working on. My friend Shasta Nelson, who has written 2 great books about friendship, actually 3, has this kind of quote, like, friendships don't just happen. Mm-hmm. Not to make it a work thing or something, we all have 50 things we're already on our to-do list, but you cannot just expect, especially as an adult, especially as you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that friendship is just going to happen because you're an adult. It's something that you have to create time for and actually be intentional about, and maybe even, create spreadsheets about or lists. So, and I hate to make it but that's true. Anything that you're going to create in your life and make better requires a little bit of effort.
I mean, you had me at Excel spreadsheet, okay? I love some colored pens and a calendar, and I've been scheduling friend dates since I was a teenager. And so when I read that you also are similar in your book, I was like, my people. I think there's, to use your analogy of the recipe, I feel like social media is kind of like junk food. And so we're like, I'm staying in touch with my friends, and we lose that deeper connection because of the junk food. Like, we don't know that we are not getting nutrition in the area of friendship. And I loved your suggestion about measure the time you spend on social media and swap that for in-person real time with those friends. I thought, I love how measurable and actual that is. That's freaking brilliant.
Yeah, trade screen time for friend time. And I want to be clear, like, especially in the pandemic, I think a lot of people have found social media or, let's say, online tools very useful, right? You were mentioning podcasting, like we're talking on Zoom right now. There is a place for this. I think it's unrealistic to say that in 2022, especially for someone who's a younger person that's kind of just entering adulthood, that you can do that you should avoid social media altogether. Right. I think that that's just unrealistic for the average person. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. It's part of how I build my business. Right. I just want to own that and be realistic about that. And to say that there is use in these tools to connect people, to get to know people, to discover people, to sell your work, to show your work. Great. To build an audience. And it's not enough. And that there has to be, like, it's not deep friendship. And it's also, the tech has to be used for people to connect in real life. If it's just, there's research around this. If tech is used as the way station where people are finding directions, right? This is what John Cacioppo, who wrote a book called Loneliness, talks about. If it's like, hey, I used fill in the blank, could be Instagram, could be a Slack channel, could be meetup.com, could be, I don't know, there's so many different apps these days, Marco Polo,
right,
whatever, fill in the blank. And I met up with people in my city, or even we met up online because we're really into, this specific show, TV show, or we want to talk about this, or we're going to create something together. and you meet up in real life, great. The tech can actually have a meaningful impact on your life. But if tech is not the way station, but just the final destination, it's where you go and you stay there and you're constantly in the hamster wheel and you're constantly just scrolling, or you're constantly even just chatting about, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm connecting. You will actually be very unhappy. It will have adverse outcomes on your social health. So it has to be something that people can get off and actually meet up in real life and do something together, or it's really toxic.
So what's your take on the metaverse then?
I'm not a fan.
Me neither. I mean, it's cool, tweeted, but yeah, go ahead. So you tweeted about it?
I just tweeted, like, you don't need a metaverse, you need a friend. And, not that that's solving anything, but look, like, I'm all for people having avenues to connect. And I think that there are people that spend a lot of time online, or really love video games, or really love, let's say, cryptocurrency, or even virtual reality, AR, and maybe the metaverse is where they meet. Cool. Nothing wrong with that. But, like, if you're not seeing someone's face, if there is no destination to say, hey, are you going to be in Austin for this conference? Or do you want to maybe go on a hike? Or do you want to cook some food or get a taco? Like, I just feel like the human element of it is missing, and we do not need another avenue to connect digitally. Is anyone asking for that? I don't need a digital. I don't need a digital portal. I have my computer in front of me. I could spend the whole day connecting with people online. I could have done that 10 years ago. I don't need another app for that. What I need is just to spend more time with people in real life. And so, people are going to build these metaverses and all great, but, like, the solution is a lot cheaper.
Right. Yeah. I liked what Russell Brand said, that he wasn't going to outsource his reality. That was his response to the metaverse. And I thought, oh, yeah.
Good answer.
That is a good answer.
Also, have you taken a walk in nature? It's pretty damn awesome. Like, yes. The world that we have is pretty cool. Like, go to a garden, take a hike, dump in the ocean, sit outside in the sun. Like, it's a pretty sweet world out there. Eat some delicious food, right? Open up, right? Have a fresh peach. Like, yeah,
Earth is pretty cool.
Earth is pretty awesome,
Yeah, I agree.
And it has a lot of problems. We also, if we could spend a little bit more time, fixing the Earth that we have, and saving the planet, and less worried about, alternate universes to plug into.
Yeah. The hairstyle of your avatar. Then I think we'd be better off. Well, as we wrap up, I have a thought about introvert versus extrovert, because you mentioned that you consider yourself an extrovert, and I consider myself an introvert, which my definition is I recharge by being alone. But I'm very outgoing. I'm not particularly shy. So I always like to clarify that. The phrase "never eat alone" was not written by an introvert. Because lunch alone is like my favorite thing, right? It's so great. And many introverts feel this way. Are there special considerations for developing deep friendships for introverts that have to simultaneously monitor their energy?
Yeah, great question. I would also, just to clarify, I'm an extrovert, but I would call myself like an introverted extrovert. I also, while I recharge from being around people, I also spend a lot of time alone, a lot of time writing, a lot of time spacing out, a lot of time thinking. I love eating alone. I love just kind of just sitting at a cafe around other people, but alone with me and my thoughts. Yeah. I would say one of the biggest would just be to start slow. And I think that a lot of times some of this stuff can feel like jumping in and going from 0 to 100 of like, we're best friends, or there's this pressure around that, and modeling what it looks like to just kind of take baby steps with some of this stuff of just getting to know someone slowly, building trust over time, hanging out for like an hour and be like, that was great. yes. All right, let's do this again. Almost like saving the good stuff, in the same way, maybe with a relationship, there's so much to be gained from building it up slowly. And you don't have to like fall in love right away, right? Like there's something beautiful about being like, ooh, yeah, like we're just kind of taking it slow. I feel that that's a really good tool, not just for introverts, frankly, but for everyone. Um, it makes it more attainable, more accessible. And it doesn't mean that you need to kind of dive in. I would always say, one of my biggest favorite things to do that I think is an introverted hack, also just something good for everyone, is honor the one-on-one. I have this in my book as well of I am somebody that can go into a big room, a conference, an event, a meetup, and like kind of feel comfortable. Like that's just how I'm built. That's it's something that I can do. I know a lot of people that's not the case, but I'll say this: I would still prefer, as someone that's comfortable in that environment, I would still prefer being in the corner talking to one person. Yeah, because I could go deeper with them. I enjoy it. It makes me feel safer. It makes me feel like I'm not being watched by everybody. So just kind of remembering, like, there's this tendency of like, well, I had friends with Cynthia on Friday night. I'm just going to invite Rachel and Amanda too, because like they're not doing anything. And I think that they would like Cynthia. It's like, oh no, because then you just kind of like, I hate when people do that to me. I like thought I was going to have a one-on-one, thought I was going to just be meeting up with one person for dinner or for a walk, and they bring somebody else. It's such a betrayal to me of trust. And at that point, you can't do anything. You can't be like, you can't be rude.
Right.
The person's there.
Right.
That's a pet peeve of mine. If
Mine
you
too.
make plans with one person, just honor the one-on-one. That's the beautiful thing. Like just spend time with them. Yeah. And that conversation is going to be so much more nuanced. You have your inside jokes. You can pick up where you left off. You can really go deeper. You can ask somebody maybe a more intimate, deeper question. You can open up more than you probably would around a stranger or someone you've met once before. So that would just be one or two things that come to mind.
Yeah, I love that. I love bringing boundaries and honoring the one-on-one. That's all of that is right up my alley and great advice. So I loved your book. I thought it was amazing. So before we sign off, tell people where they can find you on social media. We were just like, social media, but follow me on Twitter. And then of course, where they can buy your book.
Sure. So you can check out the book, Friendship in the Age of Loneliness, on Amazon or wherever you buy books. Most of my work is available on my website, smileyposwolsky.com. I know that last name's hard to spell, but just Google Smiley Friendship. You'll find me on the internet. I'm mostly active really on LinkedIn. I'm trying to kind of spend less time on other social media. I'm also on Instagram, but check out my website. It's got all my stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. I hope to see you next week too. I talk with the most interesting people that you've probably never heard of. Most of them are paradoxical and bring an opportunity for you to grow as a person. So if you like bright, meaningful entertainment, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.